Hi guys, welcome back. This is Matt Chat episode 436 featuring part 1 of a brand new series of interviews with Mr. Colin McCombs. Now you probably know who Colin is, but just in case, he's one of the key figures behind Planescape Torment, as well as Torment Tides of Numenera, as well as Planescape the campaign setting, which he worked on while he was at TSR. He's really a guy with a lot of experience in the tabletop world as well as the computer role-playing game side of it. And I was really happy to get sit down and chat with him. I think you'll really like what he has to say. In this part of the interview, we chat about some of the current projects he's doing with 3 Pound Games. We get into some VR stuff. We talk about the books he's writing. And then we get into like his early games, what got him interested in D&D, and some of the Ultimas and the Gold Box games. A lot of other topics. Let's just jump into this. So without further ado, here is Mr. Colin McCombs. All right, folks, I am here today with Colin McCombs. He is the creative lead of 3 Pound Games. He also helped design the Planescape setting, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you're into D&D, and if you watch this show, I would assume that is true. He also worked on Planescape Torment the game, as well as Torment Tides of Numenera. He's done so much other stuff. He's also written books, which I hope we'll get into here in a minute. But how are you today? I guess it's a couple days after Christmas as we're recording this. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's been an extraordinarily relaxing break so far. So, I've actually gotten out of pajamas today, so that's a thumbs up for that.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see the sweater I'm wearing here. It's the Rob Halford.
Oh, beautiful.
I'm not
beautiful.
Quite sure how this relates to him or Judas Priest, but it's a pretty fun shirt. It's got Rob Halford on the back. But anyway, I've been enjoying his Christmas album.
I can run up and get my Christmas sweater, too, if you like. It's Rick and Morty, so...
Yeah, we could do that.
All right, I'll be right back. All right, ready to go.
All right, so we're now in matching... We're not matching, but we're both in Christmas sweaters.
It's fucking festive as hell.
So what have you been up to lately?
Oh, geez. I've been working on the 3 Pound Game stuff mostly, and then noodling around
virtual
with,
reality and training stuff.
Yeah, doing. So been doing the virtual reality stuff. We've been building some games for Oculus, or rather trying to get them to Oculus. So we've been designing games for the Rift, building some stuff out for the Quest. We had our game Space Dragon, in which your arms are dragons in space, and you go around, you blow up planets, and fight, gigantic space monsters. Then also Shattered Tower, which is sort of a co-op climbing puzzle adventure game, and then working on a game called Vault of Stars, which is more a philosophical exploration of dark and light and cleansing and destruction and basically, the choices that you make that lead to your salvation or your destruction.
Wait a minute, you're doing a philosophical exploration? Who would have thought?
That would be the kind of shit I'd be into.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I was looking at some of those, I guess it's VR training exercises. That sounds pretty cool. Keep people from having to instead of actually getting into a hazardous situation, they can use VR to train in those scenarios.
Yeah, and plus, a lot of the people who get, sort of low-level training are the kind of people who had a hard time in school, right?
Right.
And so, a lot of training winds up being, okay, we're going to put you in the class, and then somebody up there is going to be teaching you, from a chalkboard, and you're like, but that's exactly why I'm here in the first place, as opposed to, putting somebody into a headset and say, okay, do this thing. This is the kind of muscle memory you're going to use. And it turns out that when you are training to do the actual task, if you have been trained in the muscle memory, you retain it so much better. Like surgeons, for instance, who trained in VR, were found to be like 80% more competent than ones who didn't have that kind of hands-on experience.
That's awesome. I mean, maybe next surgeon be like, hey, can I see your achievement list? And,
Exactly, right? Well, I've got a
well, you know
trophy.
what? It really does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's I mean, virtual reality is really just in its infancy too, and it seems like it's going to be something that's going to be big and cool, and I hope that people will give it a shot.
Well, I'm sure. I'm an educator as well. I've often thought about this. Maybe you might have some ideas. You might be just the perfect man to ask about this. So I teach writing classes mostly. But I'm really intrigued too by this, virtual reality and all that stuff. But I haven't been able to figure out a good or at least a convincing argument as to why I need virtual reality in a writing class. Do you have any thoughts?
Boy, virtual reality for writing.
How could that help you learn how to write better?
You could build something and tell people to describe it, and then basically as an exercise, uh, and then see what they focus on, and then you can address the points as to what they're focusing on and saying, okay, well, did you notice this? Did you notice this? Did you see any sort of thematic representation here throughout the whole thing? And everybody's going to come to it with a different perspective, and you're going to come away with a variety of different answers. And I think that it would be also really useful for students to look at the other answers coming out of it and say, holy crap, I never even noticed that.
There we go. Boom. You just came up with that right off the top of your head.
Pretty proud of myself for that.
So I was looking at some of your novels, and I don't know how many people that follow your game work know that you also write these novels, and they're up on Amazon. I think the first one's even free, at least as I was checking a few minutes ago on Kindle. But it's called the Oathbreaker series. Looks like there's 2 books. The latest one, the Magus Tale. So that's pretty cool. Is that something that you do as just kind of a side project, or how would where do you position your writing career?
I was sort of distracted by it when I got back into in full time into narrative design, because you're writing all day, and then at the end of the night, the last thing you want to do is like, okay, well, now I'm going to go crank out another 2,000 words. And I being paid full time to be the creative lead for Torment, meant that I had very little time to spend on developing my own world there. But I have been noodling around with it and getting back into it and reading my old stuff and cringing a bit. As any writer does, just like, oh God, I could change that. I would change that so much now. But I'm getting back into reading that and getting myself back into the headspace for that world. So
there'll be a 3rd book on the way. Is that
there is?
Is that
there is. Never intended to abandon the series. So it's working.
Yeah, I've been kind of itching to get back into it as well. I was, there for a long time. It seemed like it'd be almost impossible for any kind of freelance novelist to actually make enough income to survive. But I've been reading that that there's so much interest in the Kindle and people buying these novellas and things that a lot of people. There's one author here in St. Cloud actually who's on the #1 Kindle bestseller list, and I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, no,
It's like it's kind of opened up this whole new opportunity for authors.
Yeah, Kindle Unlimited has been just an incredible boon for authors, at least as far as exposure goes. Obviously nobody wants to be paid in exposure, but my kids tear through books. They spend pretty much almost all of their time reading on Kindle, and they're reading stuff I've never even heard of, and they're enjoying the hell out of it, and people are making a really good living on it.
So I wanted to talk just a little bit more about these novels because I found a good connection to what we're going to get into here in one of the reviews that was posted on I think it was the 2nd book by Mr. Carrots. So I don't know if Mr. Carrots is going to watch this, but I'm going to be quoting from him or paraphrasing him a little bit. So he's talking. Basically, he was saying that what he likes so much about your novels is that you're so good at the old show don't tell mantra, which I'm sure people are familiar with if they've taken any kind of creative writing classes, but he links that to your RPG design work. And I thought that was interesting, kind of where I wanted to zero in. So he says, it all makes sense to me, talking about your skills. In the story that is only told, the characters are described as having abilities, while these abilities are explained, which is something only age-old experienced RPG players care about. And from this kind of experience, many fantasy authors could benefit themselves by learning that presenting magical attributes is not enough, no matter how flashy their characters get to be, bearing those attributes. So I think I know what Mr. Carrots is saying there, maybe. It sounds like he's saying that you can't just have, you need some kind of explanation as to how magic works in your world, right? Is that sort of what you inferred there?
Yeah, as well as, don't just give people something like, this is what they do. You say, this is how they do it, and this is how they came to earn it. At least give them some sort of backstory, so it's not just, hey, look, this guy suddenly got magical flaming angel wings. It's like, okay, that's cool, but, he's just an ordinary guy the rest of the time. How did he get that? And, a lot of, comic books do this really well, or do this really well too, right? They give you the origin story essentially, and I think that's something that RPG players really connect with. Is they want to know the steps somebody has taken to get to the place where they are now, as opposed to throwing you in, sort of as a tabula rasa with all of this stuff available to you. It's not as engaging if you didn't help build that for your character. One of the keys I had for that, the character I really remember most from Planescape Torment is Ignis. Staring into the fire and then having his hand shoved into the fire, and you learn exactly how it is that he learned to be fire. And I thought that was a fantastic piece of character building, and it's something that I've always really wanted to replicate.
All right, well, let's move in then to some of your early days. And I was reading this. There's quite a bit of interesting stuff about not just the computer games, which is probably what most people tune into my show to watch, but I want to talk also about the board games and the tabletop games and your work at TSR, which apparently you got interested, or you got a job at TSR right after college.
Mm-hmm.
And you were making supplements and writing magazine articles, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here and guess you were probably playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, this time as well. So how did all this come together and you land this job?
Oh boy! So let's see. At about age 10, my brother introduced us to Dungeons and Dragons. This is 1980, and so he DM'd us through an adventure in Search of the Unknown, Module B1, in which I died horribly by my brother tricking me into jumping into an acid pool, because
that's what brothers do.
Yeah. But from that moment on, I was hooked. We had all the, we got Dungeon Master's Guide, we got the Player's Handbook, we got the Monster Manual, we got a whole bunch of minis, we got all the dice, we got a bunch of adventures, and I don't think that I stopped playing D&D until, for at least 5 years, at which point, I was 15 and had to be cool. And then a couple of years later, I went to college and realized, what, screw it, I can be cool by just being myself. I didn't get any cooler, but I felt better about myself. I continued playing D&D through college, just a huge Tolkien nerd at that time as well. And everybody's like, so Colin, you've got a degree in philosophy. What are you going to do with that? Maybe you should start practicing, do you want fries with that? Ho, ho, ho. And around age 15, I had also discovered that, people actually got paid for writing Dungeons and Dragons. And I thought, that's kind of cool. So I wrote up to the people up at TSR, and I said, maybe you guys would like to take a chance on a philosophy major who's just graduating. And they said, sure, here's a writing test. And they sent me the complete Vikings handbook and said, use this to write up an adventure for us. So I wrote up a quick little one-shot adventure for them, and I thought, okay, cool, that's it. I'm just going to get, this free handbook, and that'll be enough. But they liked it enough that they invited me up for a writing test, and they had me write another adventure there, I guess to see if I was the same person who wrote that awesome adventure for them. And they liked that enough that they hired me, like they offered me a job straight out of college.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, I was incredibly lucky. One of the guys who was working there had basically been working there for a few months and decided that it was incompatible with his religious beliefs, and so he left, and there was a vacancy just waiting for me.
Yeah, I have a question here a little bit later on, but I guess as long as the context is here, we might as well jump into it. So I was a little bit surprised that this was, of course, everybody knows about the whole satanic panic or whatever you want to call it. I guess if you weren't around, when was this? I guess I thought it's the sort of heyday must have been. Well, I guess you're right in the time zone for this, early '80s, right in the steam tunnels and all that. But wow, I didn't realize how many concessions TSR was making to this, like taking out references and redesigning characters and so on. I mean, it seemed like it had a lot more impact than I was aware of. I mean, I knew it had the sort of pop culture impact, but I wasn't aware at TSR it was having this much influence.
hmm Yeah, no. Jim Ward wrote an article in Dragon Magazine about the Mothers Against Dungeons and Dragons, or bothered about Dungeons and Dragons, something like that. But he basically his mandate was that we're not going to put anything in there that's going to get him angry letters. And so,
So you're not going to put anything in there then.
yeah, well, exactly. There's some people you're just never going to please, which I think people eventually wised up to. But so that meant that when second edition Dungeons and Dragons came out, there were no more demons and devils. It was now Tanari and Beatazu, and that was the core canon of these things. It's no longer angels; it's devas.
Devas.
Yeah, yeah, and we had made up Asimar and all that kind of stuff. So we had to, when we were building Planescape, we had to work around all of that as well, because when somebody buys the Outer Planes Monsters Compendium, it's still going to say Beatazu and Tanari. So we've got to figure out a way to make that work with this cool, edgy new world that we built, Planescape, and how are we going to do that? So.
Yeah, it must be quite a challenge. I was just thinking about how there's so many religions and denominations. I mean, even they can't agree on anything. I mean, much less, how are you going to possibly write something that's not going to offend?
Right. Yeah. And I feel like we did a pretty good job with the whole retcon on this. But at the same time, we were also getting to the point of screw these people. They're going to be mad about us no matter what we do. I mean, these are the same sort of people who are mad at Harry Potter for promoting witchcraft. So, we've got spells in our game, therefore we're teaching people to come and get demonically possessed, I guess. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this, kind of on the flip side of this. Have you ever talked to somebody that maybe took your work a little too seriously in a religious sense and was, kind of gave you that,
I've got some relatives who are more heavily religious, and they were dismayed that I was choosing this path, and I had to explain to them that no, it's just imagination. There's nothing wrong with imagination.
But I mean, has any fans taking it beyond entertainment?
Oh, not as far as I know. I have gotten letters from prisons, but I don't think
really?
I don't think they get anything. I don't think they're allowed to dive into it that way. But no, I've never had anybody be like, okay, well, I cut myself and I drew a circle on the wall trying to make a portal to Sigil, and it didn't work, man.
It didn't work, man. That just confirms, I always thought a lot of that was just pure hysteria, and it seems like that just confirms that. But anyway, on to computer games then. So you had mentioned, I probably should have written this down where this came from, but some of the computer games you played growing up and that were influential on you, and you single out some of my favorites, probably my favorite games, those Gold Box games. I don't know if you can see them in the shot up there, but Pool of Radiance, Curse of the Azure Bonds,
I love those games so much.
So you also mentioned Ultima 2 through 4. I know it's kind of very specific Ultimas.
Yeah, actually,
Might get into those. Were those just happened to be the ones you played, or were those your favorites?
the ones that really wrapped me up were U2 through 6. I enjoyed 7 and later for what they were, but they didn't grab me the same way that the other two did. In Ultima 2, I still have memories of a time when I'm being chased across Europe by a demon and I'm starving, and so I've got to try and get into one of the towns and then run up and buy food before I die from starvation. And I must have played that for hours trying to get that optimal path, and I finally did. And then some guards killed me. Which,
Did you ever get a chance to meet Lord British?
in real life,
Yeah.
no, I haven't yet. I've interacted with him, and I'd like to shake his hand someday because holy crap, that guy made such an influence on my life.
Yeah, I don't know. What is the proper way to greet him? Should you bow or?
My lead.
My liege. What do you think? Looking at those gold box games, would you? I think they hold up pretty well even today, to be honest with you. But just knowing so much about D&D that you did at the time, how did you evaluate those? Do you feel like they were close to the spirit of the tabletop game? Were there parts you think should have been better?
Yeah, while playing it, they were pretty faithful to the rules. It felt like, while still, you're like, okay, I can see why they cut the corners on that, on this particular aspect. I'm trying to remember what that particular aspect was, and I remember that when I was playing it, there were things I was like, okay, but. Yeah, trying to maximize like a fireball or a lightning bolt on those guys felt really satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
A swarm of kobolds around you, you're like, yeah, okay, I can get all of you guys right here.
Boom. I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember getting that fireball spell. I was somebody who never played, when I was playing those, I hadn't played Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop game. So I was learning all this stuff for the first time, but I'll never forget that first time I saw a fireball, and I'm like, wait a minute. It like targets an area? I grabbed like 4 of these suckers. Ah, man.
Yeah, and then you're like, yeah, lightning bolt. Oh, rebound.
Yeah, rebound. Right into my party. Yeah, it wasn't that good. I guess you had to know a little bit of basic trig or something to... I always sucked at pool, too, so not that great at lightning bolts either.
Yeah, no, I was a huge fan of those games. They came out, I think, in Pool of Radiance came out in 87, 88? No, it was 89, I
Yeah,
guess.
88, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I know I was in college when I was playing them, so.
Yeah, back in those days. I'd get the clue books and the full on.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I had Susan Manley on. I don't know. You didn't know Susan Manley?
No,
Yeah, she was
never
one
did.
of the ones that worked on that Pool of Radiance game. She told a pretty fun story about how, I guess, the pool, the original pool she designed looked too much like a toilet bowl. So there's all this joking about the toilet bowl of Radiance or something. So I'm glad they got that worked out.
Yeah, no, I actually, well, okay, you've got we'll talk about this later, I guess. But I met the authors of the book Pool of Radiance, and like all the other creators of Forgotten Realms at the time. So on my first day in the office, Zeb Cook and Jeff Grubb show up to my desk, and they're like, "Hey, new guy, we're going out to lunch. Come with us." And I was like, "Holy shit!" These guys were essentially my heroes, right? And they show up and they invite me out to lunch, and I had honestly no idea how to behave.
Was there some sort of hazing kind of deal? They take you like to a freaky restaurant and make you eat sushimi or some such?
No, they took me down to the Pick and Save, which is the grocery store down behind TSR. There was nothing special about it except I was eating with my heroes.
Well, it's kind of an off-the-wall question. I'm pretty sure you've seen this because it's posted on Twitter by Slanted and Disenchanted. I think it's the Twitter handle here. But This person was saying, maybe this is beyond your remit, but the most important question I have is, how does an RPG writer wind up dating a rock star? It's got to be a good story there.
Yeah, so back when I was at Black Isle, I was also working part-time, or well, not part-time. I was basically volunteering my time for an industrial alternative magazine called Outburn, doing music reviews and concert reviews and so forth.
This must have been was this during your cool time away from D&D?
Yeah. No, it was, I was very much into the whole, goth alternative industrial scene, combat boots everywhere, that kind of thing. And I made some friends around the music industry, and one of them was Chris Frenna, who was the ex-drummer for Nine Inch Nails. And he was also producing an album for a band called Jack Off Jill. I had sort of met them peripherally, and one of those, their first exposure to me. So toward the end of Planescape Torment, we had a database crash, and we lost a couple of weeks worth of work. I had been working probably 90 to 100-hour weeks at the time trying to get this thing wrapped up for the Christmas or the early December ship date. And I was really, really looking forward to going and spending Thanksgiving with my family. But because of the database crash, Fergus came up to me and said, we lost a lot of stuff, and if we're going to ship this, we need you to cancel your Thanksgiving plans so we can get this stuff back in here. And I was like, God, okay. Well, I can eat a bullet, or I can just, buckle up and do this. And so, I told my friends I was going to be in town for Thanksgiving after all, and Chris invited me to his Thanksgiving dinner. And Jack Off Jill was there. And so Robin and I, started talking to each other, and we were getting really interested in focusing on each other. And so we went off to Chris's studio to talk, and we wound up talking for like 3 hours. And we came out, and everybody was gone. And I got home that night, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually happy. And we started dating a couple of weeks later, and moved in a few months after that, and we're engaged a year after that. And that's been about 20 years now.
And this is Robin, who's now your partner at 3 Pound Games, right? Turned out to be quite the, for lack of a better word, nerd.
Oh, she's totally a nerd. Huge Star Trek nerd.
Yeah, it sounds like a really great, not just a great romance, but a very sort of productive relationship as well.
Yeah, no, we've been backing each other up for years now. It's been really nice. And every band has its science nerd in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Apparently, let's see, from Marilyn Manson, it was Gacy who was the keyboardist. He was apparently got a PhD in engineering, so he's the nerd for Marilyn Manson.
Kind of makes me wonder who's the nerd in Devo, or is it more like maybe there's one who's not a nerd?
Exactly, one of them, the secret jock. It's all like, hey guys, I'm gonna go throw the football around.
That's good. Okay, one last thing before we move on here. What's this about? I saw a little question, or a little snippet about that said you're working on Baldur's Gate 3. No more context than that. What are you doing on Baldur's Gate 3? And that's all for this year's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you had a great holiday, great New Year's coming up. Maybe you'll get to watch this before New Year's. Let them know if you got any gifts, or maybe gave some gifts that are related to classic computers or computer role-playing games. Maybe you even got a copy of a certain guy's book, Dungeons and Desktops 2nd Edition. So hopefully some folks are enjoying that over the break time. I hope you have some time off anyway. Anyway, as always, I want to thank you very, 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 with a little bit of extra very there, for supporting this show, for keeping Matt Chat in production. Would not do it without you. So, and, guys, I just really want you to appreciate, or realize, yeah, I want you to appreciate. I know you appreciate it, but I want you to know that I appreciate your help in making these shows and keeping these episodes coming. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Now, if for whatever reason you have been waiting to support the show, now this could be a good New Year's resolution. You can say, you know what, I'm going to change my wicked ways. I'm going to go to that Patreon site, sign up to support Matt Chat. Only $1 a show. What a deal. And guys, I will really appreciate it if you do that. All right, enough of that. What about that news from the Matt Cave? All right, so first up, this is really quick news. So this Thursday, in just a few days, I'll be interviewing Annie VanderMeer. Now, she is a writer on a lot of the Neverwinter Nights modules. She did Neverwinter Nights 2, Storm of Zaire. She's also worked on Guild Wars 2, Dead State, Destiny, and Panic at Multiverse High. And she's got some exciting new projects coming out. Anyway, I'll link to her Wikipedia page if you'd like to read more about her. But I'm interviewing Annie, like I said, Thursday. So if you have questions, comments, topics, suggestions for things to talk about, shoot me those, and I'll be happy to pass those on to Annie. So stay tuned for that. Also, we have some news about a new Alien role-playing game. I'm a big fan of those Alien movies, at least the early ones. So this is Alien, the role-playing game. It's out now. It's a beautifully illustrated full-color hardcover book presenting the world of Alien in the year 2183. And so this module, or this game rather, it has 2 play modes. One cinematic play based on pre-made scenarios, and then campaign play, which is designed for a longer session. So they're kind of positioning this, I think, as a game. You might have a big D&D game with some friends, but, sometimes you get kind of bored with that, or some people are away or whatever. You want something a little bit more self-contained, so you can play Alien in the cinematic mode to satisfy that itch. So apparently this is based on the acclaimed Year Zero engine used in games such as Tales from the Loop and Mutant Year Zero, but further adapted for Alien. So anyway, even if you don't want to play the game, I think you might want to check out this book. It's $48 for the hardcover book. And for $140, you get sort of this huge bundle with custom dice, cards, maps, screen, a whole bunch of goodies. I feel like you're really getting your $140 worth out of that. So I think that'd probably be the way to go if you're a big Alien fan, especially if you like Alien RPGs. In other news, Grimoire, Heralds of the Winged Exemplar, that is now available on GOG. What's that about? For some reason, a lot of you Matt chatters are big fans of Cleave, because I just got flooded with like, did you know this was on GOG? Did you know that? Got like 50 of those emails. It's incredible. So anyway, just in case you're not one of the people sending me the news, I thought I would share it with you. So the game is available on GOG. It's been available on Steam. Maybe a couple other places. I picked it up on Steam. But anyway, now it's on GOG.com. It's only $7.50. The guy worked on this for 20 years. You can get his game for only $7.50. Now, you probably remember this, but just in case, if you don't know what Grimoire is, go look at Matt Chat 387. That's my review of it. Plenty of other reviews you can look at. But the short of it is, I think, if you like Wizardry 7 and you like those classic lands of lore, that's what I call those, dungeon blobbers, I think is the term. I don't really like that term too much, but anyway, that's the game you'll want to check out, Grimoire. $7.50, DRM free. Go ahead and pick it up. And then finally, if you do have New Year's resolutions to make your own CRPG, maybe you want to be the next Cleave. There's a really great deal going on, and I personally picked this up as well. It's the World Building Mega Bundle on the Unity Asset Store. So if you want to work with Unity, I don't see how you could pass this up. It's a really incredible deal. And not just say, I don't work for Unity or anything, I'm just passing this on, but basically you spend $60 and you get Gaia, which you use to make the terrain. You get Weather Maker. You could probably guess what that's for. There's an ocean waves type system, vegetation studio. There's all kinds of assets for forests and meadows and winter environments, all kinds of post-processing stuff, basically to make your worlds look cooler and have fog and stuff. I mean, all of this for $60, and if you bought all this individually, I think they said this was like 90% off. So what, it's way more than double the $60. I think even Vegetation Studio alone, I wanted to say, is like normally at least $75. So I mean, this is just truly, I've never seen a deal like this. Basically, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how long it's going to last either. But basically, I think if you have any interest whatsoever in ever, making a realistic looking game with Unity, now would be the time to pull the trigger on that. Go get this world building mega bundle. All right, so let's wrap this up with a quote. And I was looking up for quotes by some of the folks that Colin had mentioned, and he mentioned Marilyn Manson a few times. Maybe he's maybe he's a fan. I don't know. But anyway, I like this. I'm definitely a fan of this quotation. It's really interesting, I think. And if you listen to Marilyn Manson in his interviews, he is a very articulate, very philosophical guy, which I think you'll see in a moment. But anyway, the quote goes something like this: "In any story, the villain is the catalyst. The hero is not a person who will bend the rules or show the cracks in his armor. He's one-dimensional intentionally. But the villain is the person who owns up to what he is and stands by it." So ponder on that, and see you guys next time.
Excuse me, are we having a party?